order. Feels like we were just here for some reason. I'd like to welcome everybody to the 22nd day of the session, Thursday, February 9th, 2023. Today in history. I thought this one was a good one. Today in history on February 9th, 1933, the coldest recorded temperature in the state is set at the Riverside Ranger Station in Yellowstone National Park at negative 66 degrees Fahrenheit. On the same day, a series of cold records were established in the region, such as a negative 63 degrees at Moran. So in my short 63 years of life, the coldest temperature I've seen on the river where I live was minus 60 in 1978. So with that, Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Convening roll call for the 22nd day, Thursday, February 9th, 2023. Alamand? Allred? Andrew? Angelos? Banks? Bear? Berger? Brown? Burkhart? Byron? Chadwick? Chestick? Clouston? Conrad? Crago? Davis? Eklund? Harrelson? Harshman? Heiner? Henderson? Hornock? Jennings? Knapp? Larson Lloyd? Larson JT? Lawley? Locke? Nyman? Newsom? Nicholas? Nemec? Northrup? Oakley?
Excused.
Obermueller? O'Hearn? Olson? Ottman? Pendergraft? Penn? Provenza? Rodriguez-Williams? Sherwood? Singh? Slagle? Smith? Stith? Storer? Strock? Stibar? Tarver? Trujillo? Walters? Ward? Washut? Western? Winter? Wiley? Yin? Zwanitzer Dan? Zwanitzer Dave? Speaker Summers?
Here.
Oakley? 62 present.
Before we have our prayer of the day, I'd like to say members of the House, Mark Quiner, Wyoming's liaison from the National Conference of State Legislators, is here today to visit with legislators about NCSL services. Mark is also a former staff member of our own LSO, and Mark worked over 20 years for LSO, was a really great attorney, was kind of a Senate attorney for the most part. Mr. Quiner will be in the Speaker's office this morning to answer any questions about NCSL services or requests for information. So please stop by and say hi if you have a few moments, and just stand up and recognize Mark Quiner in the back, please. I would like to welcome Reverend Mark Marston, First United Methodist Church, for the prayer of the day. Please stand.
Let us pray. Our Lord in heaven, fill these men and women with your Holy Spirit, that they may have the stamina to complete the tasks before them. Give them the strength, new vigor, new energy, new purpose to complete the course of work that you have before them. Give them unity of spirit to trust each other and to lean on each other, to not fall weary, but to remain strong and purposeful on this day. For these things we pray through Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. And I would like to thank Reverend Marston for joining us this week. And I think, is your daughter still in the back there?
Yes, my daughter is right there, Rachel Marston.
So maybe recognize his daughter and thank the good Reverend. So please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, sir.
Well, thank you.
The House will please come to order. Journal Committee report.
Your Journal Committee reports that the Journal of February 8th, 2023 has been read and recommends that it be approved. Representatives Chestick and Ward.
So really quickly, before I get to other privileges, we do have doctors of the day. So we have Dr. Rob Monger, and we have WWAMI students Jacob Kennedy from Cheyenne, Taylor Thompson from Cody, and Brett Andrew from Casper. So help me recognize those and give them a big round of applause. Doctors and future doctors, welcome to the House. We appreciate you and we appreciate what you do for the people and will do for the people of Wyoming and around the country. So thank you. And with that, privileged Chairman Northrup,
Yep, privilege of the floor, Mr. Speaker.
please.
It is with great pleasure that I'd like to introduce, you guys stand up, please, the homeschool students from Powell, Wyoming. They've driven all the way down here. They've got a great course going on. They're actually studying civics today, so let's be a good example for them. Welcome to the House.
Well, students, welcome to the House. I hope you learn your civics lessons well. So maybe someday you're far better at this than we are. So good luck on that. Anybody else got a privilege? Nope. Okay, messages from the Senate.
Message 266. Mr. Speaker, the bill listed below passed the Senate on third reading in an amended form by the vote indicated. Senate File 133, student eligibility in interscholastic sports, ayes 28, noes 3. Message 267. Mr. Speaker, the bill listed below passed the Senate on third reading in an amended form by the vote indicated. Senate File 138, unemployment insurance coverage, period and reporting, ayes 27, noes 4. Message 268. Mr. Speaker, the bill listed below passed the Senate on third reading in an amended form by the vote indicated. Senate File 147, government contracts, labor organization, ayes 29, noes 2. Message 269. Mr. Speaker, the bill listed below passed the Senate on third reading by the vote indicated. Senate File 148, preemption of local firearms regulation, ayes 30, noes 1. Message 270. Mr. Speaker, the bill listed below passed the Senate on third reading in an amended form by the vote indicated. Senate File 151, Wyoming Prescription Drug Transparency Act, ayes 23, noes 8. Message 271. Mr. Speaker, the bill listed below passed the Senate on third reading in an amended form by the vote indicated. Senate File 153, Election Security, ayes 29, noes 2. Message 272. Mr. Speaker, the bill listed below passed the Senate on third reading in an amended form by the vote indicated. Senate File 168, Alternative Teaching Certificate, ayes 31. Message 273. Mr. Speaker, the bill listed below passed the Senate on third reading in an amended form by the vote indicated. Senate File 107, Acquisition, Exchange, and Sale of Trust Lands, ayes 30, noes 1. Message 274. Mr. Speaker, the bill listed below passed the Senate on third reading in an amended form by the vote indicated. Senate File 142, Carbon Capture and Sequestration, ayes 25, noes 6. Message 275. Mr. Speaker, the bill listed below passed the Senate on third reading in an amended form by the vote indicated. Senate File 144, Chloe's Law, Children Gender Gap Prohibition, Ayes 26, noes 5. Message 276. Mr. Speaker, the bill listed below passed the Senate on third reading in an amended form by the vote indicated. Senate File 146, state-funded capital construction. Ayes 20, noes 11. Sincerely, Ellen Thompson, Senate Chief Clerk.
So it's not often that I have somebody here from my own community. So up there in that balcony is Caitlin Tan, and I'd like her to rise and be recognized. And I appreciate her coming down here. She's a sometimes reporter, I think, but still from my community. We are at that order of business of Senate files on first reading. The first Senate file for our consideration is Senate File 55.
Senate File 55, sponsored by Senator Nethercott.
First reading of the bill.
Chancery Court vacancies, extension, amendment.
Senate File 55 is referred to Committee Number 1 Judiciary. The next bill for our consideration is Senate File 56.
Senate File 56, sponsored by Judiciary.
First reading of the bill.
Prohibiting travel across private land for hunting purposes.
Senate File 56 is referred to Committee Number 1 Judiciary. The next bill for our consideration is Senate File 66.
Senate File 66, sponsored by Appropriations.
First reading of the bill.
School capital construction funding.
Senate File 56 is referred to Committee Number 2 Appropriations. The next bill for our consideration is Senate File 71.
Senate File 71, sponsored by Appropriations.
First reading of the bill.
State loan and bond programs.
Senate File 71 is referred to Committee Number 2 Appropriations. The next bill for our consideration is Senate File 61.
Senate File 61, sponsored by Management Council.
First reading of the bill.
Legislator per diem.
Senate File 61 is referred to Committee Number 3 Revenue. The next bill for our consideration is Senate File 100.
Senate File 100, sponsored by Senator Barlow.
First reading of the bill.
Designation of spouses, revocation upon divorce or annulment.
Senate File 100 is referred to Committee Number 3 Revenue. The next bill for our consideration is Senate File 52.
Senate File 52, sponsored by Education.
First reading of the bill.
School finance, special education funding.
Senate File 52 is referred to Committee Number 4 Education. The next bill for our consideration is Senate File 98.
Senate File 98, sponsored by Senator Barlow.
First reading of the bill.
Education, certificate of completion.
Senate File 98 is referred to Committee Number 4 Education. The next bill for our consideration is Senate File 29.
Senate File 29, sponsored by Agriculture.
First reading of the bill.
Brucellosis management updates.
Senate File 29 is referred to Committee Number 5 Agriculture. The next bill for our consideration is Senate File 102.
Senate File 102, sponsored by Senator Salazar.
First reading of the bill.
Food Freedom Act amendments.
Senate File 102 is referred to Committee Number 5 Agriculture. The next bill for our consideration is Senate File 87.
Senate File 87, sponsored by Senator Cooper.
First reading of the bill.
National resource funding, large project threshold increase.
Senate File 87 is referred to Committee Number 6 Travel. The next bill for our consideration is Senate File 106.
Senate File 106, sponsored by natural resource funding.
First reading of the bill.
2023 large project funding.
Senate File 106 is referred to Committee Number 6 Travel. The next bill for our consideration is Senate File 43.
Senate File 43, sponsored by Senator Case.
First reading of the bill.
EMS districts.
Senate File 43 is referred to Committee Number 7 Corporations. The next bill for our consideration is Senate File 76.
Senate File 76, sponsored by Blockchain.
First reading of the bill.
Wyoming Digital Asset Registration Act.
Senate File 76 is referred to Committee Number 7 Corporations. The next bill for our consideration is Senate File 16.
Senate File 16, sponsored by Transportation.
First reading of the bill.
State employee moving expenses.
Senate File 16 is referred to Committee Number 8 Transportation. The next bill for our consideration is Senate File 53.
Senate File 53, sponsored by Transportation.
First reading of the bill.
Wyoming National Guard medical insurance premiums.
Senate File 53 is referred to Committee Number 8 Transportation. The next bill for our consideration is Senate File 116.
Senate File 116, sponsored by Senator Dockstader.
First reading of the bill.
Protection of lawful commerce and firearms.
Senate File 116 is referred to Committee Number 9, Minerals. The next bill for our consideration is Senate File 139.
Senate File 139, sponsored by Senator Kolb.
First reading of the bill.
Unlawful use of charge card or debit card.
Senate File 139 is referred to Committee Number 9, Minerals. The next bill for our consideration is Senate File 9.
Senate File 9, sponsored by Senator Baldwin.
First reading of the bill.
Medicaid coverage, licensed pharmacists.
Senate File 9 is referred to Committee Number 10, Labor. The next bill for our consideration is Senate File 37.
Senate File 37, sponsored by Senator Baldwin.
First reading of the bill.
Podiatry, medical services, Medicaid.
Senate File 37 is referred to Committee Number 10, Labor. Reports from standing committees.
Senate File 42, sponsored by Revenue, taxation of cigars. Mr. Speaker, your Committee Number 2, Appropriations, to whom is referred Senate File 42 engrossed, taxation of cigars, respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that it amend and do pass failed in accordance with House Rule 5-4. Ayes, Representatives Henderson, Sherwood, Stith, Walters, Zwanensters. No, Representative Larson, Nicholas. Representative Nicholas, Chairman.
No bill, no bills on second readings. We're at that order of business of bills on third reading and final passage. Mr. Majority Floor Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would move bills on third reading consent list. Bills, Senate File Number 2, Senate File Number 4, Senate File 23, and Senate File 77.
Would anyone like any of these bills removed from the consent list? Will the reading clerk please read the bills on the consent list?
Senate File 2, sponsored by corporations. Wyoming Telecommunications Act, sunset date, an act relating to telecommunications being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming. Senate File 4, sponsored by Labor, North American Industry Classification System Amendments, an act relating to workers' compensation being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming. Senate File 23, sponsored by Judiciary, Treatment Courts transferred to Judicial Branch, an act relating to courts being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming. Senate File 77, sponsored by Minerals, Public Works Apprenticeship Programs repeal, an act relating to city, county, state, and local powers being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
Having been read 3 separate times, the question is, shall these bills pass the House? Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Allemand? Allred? Andrew? Angelos? Banks? Bear? Berger? Brown? Burkhart? Byron? Chadwick? Chestick? Klauston? Conrad? Crago? Davis? Eklund? Haroldson? Harshman? Heiner? Henderson? Hornock? Jennings? Knapp? Larson Lloyd? Larson JT? Lawley? Locke? Nyman? Newsom? Nicholas?
Excused.
Nemec? Northrup? Oakley? Obermuller? O'Hearn? Olson? Ottman? Pendergraft? Penn? Provenza? Rodriguez Williams? Sherwood? Singh? Slagle? Smith? Stiff?
Excused.
Storer? Strock? Stivar? Tarver? Trujillo? Walters? Ward? Washit? Western? Winter? Wiley? Yin? Swanenser Dan? Swanenser Dave? Speaker Summers?
Aye.
Nicholas? Stith? Are there any changes? Closing vote. Vote closed. 62 aye. As for Senate File 2, are there any changes? Are there any changes? Smith? Aye to no. Further changes? Closing vote. Vote closed. 61 aye, 1 no. As for Senate File 4, are there any changes? Any changes? Closing vote. Vote closed. 62 aye. As for Senate File 23, are there any changes? Singh, aye to no. Henn, aye to no. Andrew, aye to no. Slagle, aye to no. Smith, aye to no. Stivar, aye to no. Bear, aye to no. Strock, aye to no. Ward, aye to no. Haroldson, aye to no. Winter, aye to no. Angelos, aye, oh, excuse me. Angelos, aye to no. Heiner, aye to no. Jennings, aye to no. Allemand, aye to no. Tarver, aye to no. Pendergraft, aye to no. Banks, aye to no. Locke, aye to no. Ottman, aye to no. Further changes? Closing vote. Vote closed. 42 aye, 20 no. As for Senate File 77, are there any changes? Chestick, aye to no. Further changes? Closing vote. Vote closed. 61 aye, 1 no.
Having received the affirmative vote of the majority of the members elected to the House, House Bills 2, 4, 23, and 77 have passed the House. We are now at that order of business of bills on third reading and final pass, the regular list. The first bill for our consideration is Senate File 13.
Senate File 13, sponsored by corporations. Bar and grill liquor license amendments, an act relating to alcoholic beverages being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
Representative Yin.
Mr. Speaker, I move third reading amendment number 1 to Senate File 13 and ask for your favorable consideration. So members, in the second reading amendment, what it did was actually just put the cap back on for just towns. All this amendment does is make it conform for counties, as well as the changes that would have happened if the cap was removed. So we're just putting the cap back on for everything across the board. And I verified with all the stakeholders that this was the original intent. Thank you.
Question having been called, all those in favor of third reading amendment number 1 to Senate File 13 signify by saying aye. Opposed? Third reading amendment number 1 to Senate File 13 has been adopted. Senate File 13, having been read 3 separate times, the question is, shall the bill pass? Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Allemand? Allred? Andrew? Angelos? Banks? Bear? Berger? Brown? Burkhart? Byron? Chadwick? Chestick? Klauston? Conrad? Crago? Davis? Eklund? Haroldson? Harshman? Heiner? Henderson? Warnock? Jennings? Knapp? Larson Lloyd. Larson JT. Lawley. Locke. Nyman. Newsom. Nicholas. Nemec. Northrup. Oakley. Obermuller. O'Hearn. Olson. Ottman. Pendergraft. Penn. Provenza. Rodriguez Williams. Sherwood. Singh. Slagle. Smith. Stith. Storer. Strock. Stivar. Tarver. Trujillo. Walters. Ward. Washut. Western. Winter. Wiley. Yin. Zwaniter Dan. Zwaniter Dave. Speaker Summers.
Aye.
Are there any changes? Eklund, aye to no. Further changes? Closing vote. Vote closed. 38 aye, 24 no.
House Bill 13, having received the affirmative vote of the majority of the members elected to the House, House Bill 13 has passed the House. The next bill for our consideration is Senate File 48.
Senate File 48, sponsored by Education. Education Suspension Expulsion Model Policies, an act relating to education being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
Chairman Harshman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'd move third reading amendment number 1 to Senate File 48. That's corrected copy with my co-sponsor. Mr. Speaker, this bill is it's a joint education bill. And I served, of course, on joint education in the 66th. So I think this bill, I keep trying to say this bill, I think can do some good, particularly maybe for small districts. It requires the state superintendent to develop these policies. I'd like to improve the bill so it actually does something. And I'm trying to fix a real world problem in my school, which I've talked to you about, is when the bell rings, it's, I think about the 10th biggest city in Wyoming. We have 2 police officers there. We got a couple nurses. We got 2,000 people running around. And so there's a lot going on. And and this is my 32nd year I've been privileged to work there. And I think, so what's happened this fall is we've had 2 youngsters bring loaded handguns. And one of our police officers had to chase them down, and those police officers aren't in the funding model. So that's part of that flexibility that local school districts have to hire what they need, but, and tackle him. And so then I get thinking, okay, so how is this all gonna play out? So then this is all spelled out in the law, and it's all spelled out in 21-4-306 on this suspension expulsion, what this bill deals with. And so you can see the paragraph on the amendment that's brought in is under this 21-4-306, it's paragraph C. And it's just talking about, and you can read the new language there, but just a little background on these. There's really about 5 subparagraphs for expulsion. And because it's a pretty serious offense, and it's and those are defined in statute, and basically talks about the habitual defiance, destruction, disruption, torturing other students, and then this paragraph Romanet 5 talks about bringing a deadly weapon to school. Now there's a difference between, and then it goes on in this paragraph C. It references in this amendment. You can see. So it talks about on line 17 of the amendment, paragraph A5. That's the deadly weapon paragraph. And then it talks about on line 15 on subsection D. And that's also in the statute. And that gives the school board, it refers specifically to a deadly weapon. And it gives the school board the directive to work with their superintendent to review these on a case-by-case basis And because there's a difference between a kid having a hunting rifle who was out hunting antelope and forgot to take it out, or a kid who's got a loaded handgun in his waist. There's a difference, and the school boards will deal with that. And then, so when this happens though, and if there's a, you know, the intent is there, these follow parallel processes. One is going to be a legal process, and that's spelled out in that paragraph D. And then the school board of trustees process. So you can, the school board of trustees can expel a student for up to a year for any of these 5 things: destruction, torture, disruption, and a deadly weapon. And currently, school boards, it's not in our statute, are not required to provide educational services. Now, most of them do. I think nearly all of them do. But what this amendment would say, it would give local boards of trustees the ability to continue to assess these cases one-on-one, but maybe they want to say at the end, hey, we're going to keep this expulsion going for another 6 months, but we are going to provide you services. And that's what this amendment says. Most school districts are providing services, but if we do expel you for longer than a year, we have to provide you services. And that's really what the amendment does. And you think about a junior, September, brings a loaded handgun to school, gets suspended a year, or maybe he's halfway through his junior year. Does he come back for the last 2 months of his senior year? I mean, these are all weird situations, and I think we want to give our local elected trustees a little more flexibility so they can support and have student safety in our schools, paramount. And this body, the Wyoming House, the Wyoming legislature has done a tremendous job over the last 10 years addressing this issue. Done a great job. So really, that's what I'm trying to do with this amendment, is give this bill a little more something to do, basically, and solve a couple little problems. So with that, I'd stand for any questions, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Berger for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm on and for this amendment. I'm a sponsor, but just to give you a little history on this, it's happened to me before. This exact similar incident years ago, but and this was for a senior. It was about 2 weeks before the end of the school year. We had to present senior projects. He forgot he had his hunting rifle in his truck and made a mistake. And so with this, it would have been better. Now, we still let him graduate. We all got together, and he was in my homeroom, and the superintendent and I and the board, and the board gave the superintendent some leeway here to make the right decision. We made sure this kid got his diploma, finished school, and all that. And this would have even helped that and aligned that even more, and would have helped our superintendent make a better decision. He made a great decision, but this would have just helped with that. And I really like this bill. It doesn't happen very often. We're talking about that one kid or couple kids or whatever, they forget to take their hunting rifle out of their vehicle on Sunday and are like, oh, and the expulsion law says, and then there's no gray line. And this just gives that superintendent and the board a little bit of leeway to help provide that education and help them with that mistake they made. So they get them that diploma and the right supports as well. So on and for this bill. Thank you. This amendment.
Chairman Northrup for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As long as the education, as it says in line 21, as long as those educational services are continued for that student, that's paramount to all of education. Those kids, regardless of what mistake they made, whether they leave a hunting rifle, as the previous example, or whether they intentionally, the kids still need to have an education, and that's paramount in my mind. So I support this. Thank you.
Representative Davis for your first time.
Mr. Speaker, I'm just a little concerned here. You know, we're talking about weapons, guns, but deadly weapon. You know, a lot of times a screwdriver, a hammer. So, I mean, there's a multiple things called deadly weapons out there. So I'm a little concerned with I need a better explanation of what deadly weapon would be.
Anybody else for their first time? Anybody for their second time before the sponsor? Chairman Harshman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Take that last question first, and the definition of a deadly weapon is defined under Title VI, not in this education statute. There is a definition here, and that's a good question. It's 61104, paragraph A, Romanet 4. So that's where that's defined. That's referenced in this 214306. So that's part of that statute. And I think that was the only question, I think. So I appreciate it, and this will be a good step for student safety and safety in our schools, give our local board of trustees a little more flexibility when these rare instances do occur. And I would just follow up, you know, our tone here on this floor, now we're on the YouTube world, so I don't want to make any mistake. Our schools are extremely safe. We have the best education system in the world. Our kids, we're 1 or 2 in graduation rates. We slipped a little bit. We're at an all-time high in our state's graduation rates. You look at the states that take a ACT to every student.
On the amendment.
We're doing great, Mr. Speaker. And so I don't want this bill to send a message like that. And our teachers are the best. And so again, we got a great thing going. I just want to give a little flexibility to the boards. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
All those in favor of third reading amendment number 1 to Senate File 48 signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Third reading amendment number 1 to Senate File 48 has been adopted. Senate File 48 having been read 3 separate times, the question is, shall the bill pass? Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Allemand, Allred, Andrew, Angelos, Banks, Bear, Berger, Brown, Burkhart, Byron, Chadwick, Chestick, Klauston, Conrad, Crago, Davis, Eklund, Haroldson, Harshman, Heiner, Henderson, Hornock, Jennings, Knapp, Larson Lloyd, Larson JT, Lawley, Locke, Nyman, Newsom, Nicholas, Nemec, Northrop, Oakley, Obermuller, O'Hearn, Olson, Ottman, Pendergraft, Penn, Provenza, Rodriguez-Williams, Sherwood, Singh, Slagle, Smith, Stith, Storer, Strock, Stivar, Tarver, Trujillo, Walters, Ward, Washut, Western, Winter, Wiley, Yin, Zwaniter Dan, Zwaniter Dave, Speaker Summers. Are there any changes? Allemand? Allemand? Yes. Aye to no. Further changes? Closing vote. Vote closed. 44 aye, 18 no.
House Bill 48, Senate File 48, having received the affirmative vote of the majority of members elected to the House, Senate File 48 has passed the House. The next bill for our consideration is Senate File 78.
Senate File 78, sponsored by Minerals, Apprenticeship and Job Training Promotion in Schools, an act relating to education, labor, and employment, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
Representative Hornock.
Mr. Speaker, I move third reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 78, ask for your favorable consideration. So I was trying to do 2 things with this amendment. The first is to be the shortest amendment yet. And I'm not sure if I accomplished that one, but we'll see if I can accomplish the second goal as well. So this amendment, what it does is actually just deletes 1 word. If you look at the bill on page 2, there's the word registered in association with the apprenticeship program. So So it's deleting the word registered from the apprenticeship programs. The rest of the bill just references apprenticeship programs. This is the only place in the bill that references a registered apprenticeship program. So let me tell you why I have deleted this one. Registered apprenticeship program is a little bit narrow, actually, and especially for the state of Wyoming, I think. So a registered apprenticeship program has to be a national registered apprenticeship program, and usually it's connected with a union. So the union, the national union organizations set up these apprenticeship programs. They're great. They can be great. I'm not limiting, or what I'm doing is not limiting what we're doing here in Wyoming to that type of registered apprenticeship program. I'm actually trying to open the door for any apprenticeship program. So for instance, if a law firm wants to develop an apprenticeship program just specific to their law firm, they can do that. If an oil field company wants to set up an apprenticeship program specific to right here in Wyoming to attract kids to work in their company under their apprenticeship program, they will be able to do that. So I'm not limiting it to just those unionized registered apprenticeship programs. I'm trying to open the door to any of these apprenticeship programs and allow that to also be introduced in the school systems. Earlier on our third reading, we deleted a section in statute that, and it passed, that worked with some apprenticeship programs. So now I'm actually trying to just kind of open that door to allow more of this for students in school so that we can train more students in whatever field they decide to go in. And I ask for your favorable consideration. I'll stand for questions. Thank you.
Representative Conrad for your first time.
Mr. Speaker, thank you, and I do appreciate the words of my predecessor this afternoon, and more importantly this morning, and I do appreciate the goodwill nature of the amendment that he's proposing. I will share with you that it is fairly defined, and I do agree with that description. Specifically, let's not dilute this so that we're not successful. And I'm appreciative of whoever wholesome bricklayers for chimneys of America that may not be registered, but they can register. So I think my concern with this is it may dilute the viability and the success of such a program as we try to establish metrics, key performance indicators, and ultimately the success or non-success. My concern is that we don't have some sort of legality, or more importantly, description and reference for what is a registered apprenticeship. This could really dilute our efforts and ultimately become not successful. But I do appreciate with clarity the good intentions that have been amended or tried to be amended here, but it's just not the right time, and I stand on and oppose to the respective amendment at this time.
Representative Haroldson for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So after this bill hit the floor, I called a number of local businesses and business owners in my community that work in the trades, and I told them about this situation and this idea, and they were ecstatic. They said, we need this. We struggle to fill positions. I would much rather have a young man or a young woman that's coming out of the school system and be able to do this, where they can learn from the ground up kind of how we do things. Great idea. We should have done this a long time ago. I'll tell you right now, not a single one of them have a registered apprenticeship program. What would this be? HVAC, contract building, metal and fab work. Those are the three areas and multiple businesses that cover those areas, 5 total. So what do we do? What do we do in a community of that I come from that we don't have any registered apprenticeship programs? They would have to go to Cheyenne to get the closest registered apprenticeship program through a union or a program like that. I'll tell you with confidence, the moment I tell these small family-owned businesses, you got to register your apprenticeship program to be able to do this, they won't do it. And so I believe that this is a good idea. Will they learn what they need to learn? Absolutely. Is it a situation where they will work out what that program looks like on a day in, day out basis? Absolutely. But as an apprentice, walking through an apprenticeship and also helping others walk through apprenticeships themselves, I know that the best way to do an apprenticeship is hands-on in the field, doing the work next to a journeyman. And so if you can do that, that's the epitome of an apprenticeship. Now, I did two types of apprenticeships in my day. The one was a very structured, organized, union-style apprenticeship. The second one was not. And I'll tell you what, I learned equally from both. I don't believe there's a good and a bad. I believe they're both good. They just have different approaches. And I don't think we should alienate our small businesses from being a part of this by making it registered only. So I am on and for the amendment. Believe this will open up the doors to make this a better situation.
Representative Lawley for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. When we spoke about this bill yesterday, I believe it was, I think it was a long day, maybe it was the day before, but either way, I talked a little bit about the work that went into designing this program, trying to navigate rules and regulations that exist and still provide access for students to certain trades that do have some rules and regulations concerning safety and age limitations and so the registered word in here is about protection. It's about working through a process, but still providing a pathway. So again, on and against the amendment, it begins to kind of change what's trying to be done here. And what it ends up doing is while it might in some cases limit, it ends up by taking this word out, you eliminate pathways. So again, I just am on and for or against the amendment.
Representative Berger for your first time.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Speaker. So let me help you clarify this a little bit. So I'm on and against this amendment, but here's why. We have two types of things going on, especially in my district, okay? We do have apprenticeships, and we also have what we call internships. And I encourage your school districts to start, and your small communities to get, and your small businesses to start getting on board with internships. Now, you all know what I do. I'm a special ed teacher, and I work transition. We don't do the apprenticeship program. We work on internships. Internships are just an extension of my classroom. So that's when I take the kids out into the community and pair them up with the business, and they go out there and they'll work 3 to 6 weeks as an intern. And that's just part of the classroom, okay? The apprenticeship piece side, the way I see it, it's more of a higher step and professional side of this, okay? Where we can really keep track of the data and go and really see how these apprenticeships are really working. So yes, you can, your businesses in your community can work with kids, especially in these internships. That's where that's done. Do it. I encourage you. Get working with your disabled teachers. Get these internships really out there. And I really support these apprenticeships. So again, I'm against this bill because of that reason right there. And I know most of those districts are doing internships, so let's really push this apprenticeship program the way it is. Thank you.
Representative Trujillo for your first time.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Mr. Speaker, I worked in the oil and gas industry for the past 15 years or so, and we have a lot of welders that come through our industry. And some of these guys aren't apprentices through a registered program. A lot of these guys have come up through the industry as apprentices within companies in their hometown, in their family businesses. What qualified them to work and their pay rate was their age and experience. It didn't matter if they were through a union or non-union. So on and for this amendment.
Representative Chestick for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On and against the amendment. I do agree with many of the comments that have been made from all the podiums that apprenticeship programs and on-the-job training is excellent and necessary and one of the best ways to learn. I, in fact, ran an externship program, an apprenticeship program for a number of years at the College of Law, where we would match up students to law firms or nonprofit organizations or government agencies, and we would refer, make the match, and it was great. The students loved it. They got a learning experience, and I'm very much in favor of those kinds of programs. But we did some quality control. When we had a new placement opportunity, one of my jobs was to talk to the placement site, find out what kind of work the students would be doing, what opportunities they would have, what kinds of things. So we did some quality control. If we were going to be part of the match to these placement opportunities, we wanted to make sure that the students were going to get a good learning opportunity. I see this apprenticeship program in the high schools as very similar. If the school is going to be part of that placement matched process, the school has some obligation to make sure that the students will be getting a good learning opportunity. One way they do that is through the registration process. If there's a registered apprenticeship program, that's a measure of quality, and that's something I think is good. Removing the word registered basically says we're not going to do any quality control. We're just going to hope that what they learn is good, and the placement site's going to give them a good learning opportunity. And I'm a little bit nervous about that. So I am against this amendment, although I am very much in favor of apprenticeship programs. Thank you.
Representative Davis for your first time.
Mr. Speaker, one thing that sets Wyoming apart from other states is we are a right-to-work state. And I am a product of the unregistered process here. You know, when I was a young man, that's how I got to be a journeyman plumber, you know? So I think this process right here, without registry in it, can still go forth and produce really good people and good quality workers. You know, sometimes it's not all what is defined in the job description, which would be taught according to the registry. There's more to any job than what is being the sideboards or whatever you want to put in there. And I think by taking this verbiage out, I think this is a great idea, great opportunity for our youth to understand what the total encompasses of that job opportunity.
Chairman Burkhart for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. First for a second.
Representative Pendergraph for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I am on and for the amendment, and I'm actually for the bill. You may remember I spoke about it when I first saw it, and I was a little bit skeptical. But the more I learn about this, the more I like what it's doing. And one of the reasons I like what it's doing is, if I'm sounding a little arrogant, I'm a bit of a Renaissance man. I have a lot of different interests that I'm involved with. One of them, for example, is sound and recording. I would love to be able to take on some high school kids and teach them the things that I've learned over the last 20 or 30 years in playing with that, but I'm not going to go through the process of trying to register that and all the other details that are there. There are any number of artisans and craftsmen out there and any kinds of businesses we can't even conceive of that might want to take advantage of this and offer some sort of a program for somebody to learn what they've learned. If, however, we limit it to just registered, organized trades, I think we kind of curtail the potential for this. So again, on and for.
Chairman Washut for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One, I'd like to know what's involved in getting a program like this registered. What does that bureaucracy look like? How convoluted might that be? And number two, I think the reason why we do some quality control might include things like the presence of registered sex offenders in that organization. Are we going to place our students into an organization to do an apprenticeship program if some of the employees in that organization might be registered sex offenders? We wouldn't let those registered sex offenders work in our schools, but now we're going to send our students into an external environment where they may be present. So I think it makes sense to have some screening mechanism in place, but I am interested in just how burdensome that process is to become registered.
Representative Clouston for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Against the amendment, because I just think we're confusing what's going on here. The apprenticeship program is a national program, has technical assistance, national credentialing, quality standards, tax credits. Our school district has an apprenticeship program, and then we also have mentorships and internships, right? So my company, we do internships, mentorships, but we're not an accredited program through this other program. So I think what we're doing here is just confusing the two different things. We have tons of companies in my community that do internships and mentorships. Not as many do the registered apprenticeship, but those are a little bit more technical skills. So I think this, the registered is just kind of confusing what we're really trying to accomplish for these CTE programs in Wyoming. Thank you.
Representative Penn for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm on and for this amendment and on and for the bill as well. I think that this amendment attempts to cut government regulation, which is what we need. If we feel the need to regulate away all risk, what we end up doing is just increasing government control, which stifles the free market and which is the opposite of what we actually need. Thank you.
Representative Ottman for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just along this lines, 40 years ago, my husband told me he was a welder and he was working for a shipyard, and he said, we are in trouble because there's no young people coming up behind. All the colleges and things were turning towards degrees and towards political or social sciences and computer sciences. So there you go. But he, as a young man, grew up in agriculture and learned how to drive and how to weld and how to mend. And at 18 years old, these young people were building oil rigs. They didn't go through register, they got a job. They learned how to do the job and they were trained. While I think that some of these programs can be good and people should be able to go through them if they prefer, to start registering everything, the next thing you know, it's a requirement, and then it's part of the situation where we are right now, where there is no on-the-job training. So I am against or for the amendment and for the bill. Thank you.
Chairman Newsom for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A lot of times in this body, we say we're looking at the 30,000-foot view or we're looking at the 50,000-foot view. I think we need to get on ground level on this one. I think we need to go into the offices of our guidance counselors and say, here we have this group of registered apprenticeships that you need to provide information for. Now, are we going to task our counselors who are already overworked, who already have too many students to counsel, to go chase around some unregistered apprenticeship programs? Are we going to task them with going out in the community and trying to create unregistered programs in addition to all of their other job obligations that they have? I think what this does, allowing having the word registered, allows sideboards for our guidance counselors to say, here are the programs. Now, this does not preclude them from going out and looking at other programs at all and going into the community, but it does give them some sideboards to say, here's our expectation for the information that you are going to provide to students. So I think we need to look at it in the eyes of the guidance counselor who's promoting these programs. If we put more stuff on their plate, they're just not going to do it. So let's keep the registered apprenticeship programs as part of this bill, not to preclude them from expanding the program within their school if they want, but to allow them to have some sideboards. So I'm on and against the amendment, on and for the bill.
Representative Heiner for your first time.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. We have one of the best scholarship programs in the United States, the Hathaway Scholarship. And Speaker, I don't know if I can say Hathaway. If I'm not supposed to, I won't say it.
Probably not.
But it's the envy of all the states around us. We provide a great pathway for our
high school graduates to further their education in college. What a wonderful thing this legislature did in previous decades to provide this. But the fact of the matter is, only 60% of high school graduates go on to college. The other 40% go into the workforce. So this is an opportunity through the apprenticeship program to create a more clear path for these students to get into the workforce. Let's not impede that. Let's encourage them through a workforce apprenticeship program to be able to pursue the kind of career that they want. And by limiting that through this being registered or not registered, we may be holding some back in their career path. So I encourage us to adopt this amendment and open it up for these 40% of our high school graduates to find the career path that they desire. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Anybody else for their first time? Anybody for their second time before the bringer of the amendment? Representative Haroldson for your second time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So I love this conversation. This is good. We need to have this. A couple things I want to address. If we have a registered apprenticeship program or don't have a registered apprenticeship program, does not eliminate our local control in our school boards or our facilities to be able to police and take care of this. I'm not saying that we just give a free-for-all where we're sending kids to workplaces with sex offenders and put them in the sweatshops. That's not what I'm saying. We have organizations in this country that protect our workplaces. My first apprenticeship that I did was when I was a kid, and there was a lot of equipment I was not legally able to use. I could not run the mill. I could not run a lathe. I couldn't run an iron worker. Why? Because they don't let kids do that. That's already protected by a federal regulatory agency that protects the workforce. So I think that's something that we need to understand. The second thing is this. If we were talking about the good capital city or that city in the middle of the state, right? Number one in your hearts, we always hear. Or what about coal country? Should we do, in those communities, a registered program, a registered apprenticeship program? Absolutely, because those are larger industry areas. Those are areas that we have this ability. But I'm gonna bring you guys to the county I represent. We're mineral deficient. I had one of our local elected officials tell me one time, he says, we don't know what boom and bust is because we always are busting. That's just the reality. Our money comes from ag. So I represent a community with 4 schools in it. Okay, so in a school in the town that we stand in today, yeah, there's gonna be a lot of options for those registered apprenticeship programs. What about a community with a school with 25 kids? What now? Do you think they don't deserve to have the apprenticeship program? Oh, we need to have a registered apprenticeship program. So the little mom and pop HVAC company down the road, what about them? Oh man, you got to go through this apprenticeship program so you can do this. Well, that's not feasible, you guys. So at the end of the day, we're all about equality for the education of these children, but in the reality is what I see a lot of times is communities like mine get overlooked massively. So this is an opportunity that we can take small communities, open the door and say, hey, we're going to offer an apprenticeship program. You guys, we're in a day and age where we have to wake up. The blue-collar trade's lost. I got more scar tissue on these hands than skin because of my prior lifestyle. I understand this world better than most. I know what a 27-day straight 12-hour night shift looks like. I've done it. I've hung 300 foot in the air upside down with my harness on welding a 5G. I've done it. I get this stuff, you guys. So what are we doing? We're going to tell kids, go to university. Well, that's fine, but maybe that doesn't work for a kid. Maybe that's not the direction. So when they come into a middle school situation, we set them down and say, hey, here's your career course options. This is what our universities offer. We got a beautiful, amazing scholarship that can do that. Hey, this is another option. Let's go into the trade line. These are the pay rates of what these blue-collar jobs are doing, and these are your opportunities. Let's start giving these kids 2 different options, 2 different directions, one that goes into our universities, our community colleges, others that don't. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's what we need to go for. So I believe that if we're not careful, what we're going to do is alienate the small communities of our state from being able to even be able to use this. And if we do that, then I believe that we failed to do our job in this situation. So I am definitely on and for the amendment, on and for the bill. I believe this is a nexus to the generation coming forward and how we're going to deal with a major issue that we have in our state. And I'll tell you what, we keep losing our kids, but apprenticeships, that's how we keep our kids, because they're going to walk out of that classroom one day with a graduate certificate, and they're going to walk into the business they've been apprenticeshiping in, and they're going to have a job, and they're going to be bringing our young people back into the state. So on and for the amendment.
Representative Conrad for your second time.
Mr. Chairman, thank you, and representatives, thank you as well for a very interesting conversation, but unfortunately, I think we've digressed into what we're trying to accomplish here, and that is specifically our children, the mutual purpose that we have. I want to share with you that registered does not equate in any form, fashion, or manner to rigidity. It establishes, as we've heard 100 times before, some sideboards to increase legitimacy. I will share with you this. The registration for apprenticeships and/or trades is not that difficult, and I will provide the body with that if it's appropriate as this relationship goes. But think of your child. If they're in high school and they want to go to an apprenticeship and you don't know anything about it, or more importantly, as pointed out earlier by a respective representative, if you don't have, or if the guidance counselors don't have a true understanding of what that apprenticeship is, it could digress in validity or the security of that respective student. I'll also share with you this. It does not limit anything. As industrial, we attract and have apprenticeships programs. This is to encourage our kids to become full-time employees. This is not a restrictive element at all. It just establishes, as we've heard before, sideboards. Think of this. It's about the betterment of our society, and more importantly, the state. We're not detracting. We just don't want to see this thing enlarge to the fact that we have no control on it. We open the gate and we've got 1,000 apprenticeships out there with no sort of metrics assigned. And if we're going to promote something in the schools, I believe the Board of Trustees in respective school districts want to see some degree of validity as it comes to what the program's for, how many hours are for, what the applicability rate is, what the alignment is, et cetera, to the respective businesses. My good colleagues, we're losing the point here. I respectfully submit to you, on this amendment, vote no.
Representative Trujillo for your second time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We're forgetting that these businesses that we're going to try and go through apprentices have licensed techs or licensed people that are specific to the trade that we're trying to do an apprenticeship. So why do we need a electric company to be registered when we already know they have licensed techs? That's who your apprentice will fall under. So on and for this amendment.
Chairman Burkhart for your second time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So ladies and gentlemen, it's been a good conversation, good discussion, good debate, and I've hesitated calling point of order on a lot of this because a lot of it is outside of what the statute says, what this bill says. What this says is it directs the director of the department to give to the school board trustees a list of available registered apprenticeship programs, student learner agreements, and on-the-job training available to students for pay, school credit, or both. It has nothing to do with whether an apprenticeship program is good or bad, how many there are, or anything else. It has to do with directing the department to make this information available to the school boards. And there are registered programs. And we need those because they are a control. That's how you get money to pay for the students in the programs or the student learner programs. This bill, I apologize, the amendment has a detrimental effect on the bill itself in that these registered programs are needed in order to qualify for the money that goes to the students in the programs. They have to be registered. There's nothing wrong with going down to your local carpenter and say, can I follow you around and be your apprentice? That's still available to any of us. What this has to do is directions we're giving the department on making this information available because it currently is not readily available to the students. They generally don't know about this. This is kind of the final installment on the apprenticeship work we've done in the past. In effect, by removing registered, you take out the control on this, you open it up to everything, and really changes the entire structure and the entire meaning of this bill. So I would be on and against the amendment. I would ask you to vote no, but pass the bill forward. Thank you.
Anybody else for their second time for the sponsor? Representative Hornock for your second time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I appreciate the discussion. It's just one word, so I thought it'd be a little bit shorter. So I apologize for that. But let me just say that I am a product of a program at the high school that I went to that allowed me to go on site half the day and build a house. And that cut my teeth in construction. It wasn't associated with any type of organizations. It was actually through the school district that they did this kind of thing. It wasn't registered. It was actually just a class. That put me through college. That line of work has paid the bills ever since. So it's been a good place for me to learn is in that high school time period. I think that we have forgotten a couple of things here. In the bill on page 4, the school board is supposed to establish guidelines to implement student training and employment programs in schools in the district. So that sets the sideboards. The school board will set the sideboards for this. What I am trying to do is open the school board up to allow other organizations, other companies, other entities to go to them and say, hey, I would like to set up a training program. And that will allow this. And the point was made earlier, not every, I'll put it this way, even in this city, not every trade organization is represented here in this city. And so you're still limited in the largest city in Wyoming. You're still going to be limited to what you can and cannot do within the school district. I would prefer to open that up for everybody. I would prefer to have those avenues for larger companies to do this. Now, so let's not forget also about the safety aspect. It was mentioned a couple of times. Every company, every organization, as small as my company is, I have to abide by OSHA regulations and OSHA requirements. That's standard across the board. It's not going to be that I'm going to take some high schooler into my company and throw him out to where he's walking 4 stories up without a harness. That just doesn't happen. There's OSHA requirements that every company, every organization has to abide by. So the safety standards really is not a factor in this. Obviously, companies are going to not want the liability and try to keep their employees safe as possible. Anyway, I won't belabor much anymore, but I do think this is just a great opportunity to allow in our smallest communities the availability of these programs throughout our school districts. So please, I urge you to vote aye on this amendment, and thank you, appreciate it.
All those in favor of third reading amendment number 1 to Senate File 78 signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? No. Third reading amendment number 1 to Senate File 78 has failed. Division having been called, all those in favor, please stand. All those opposed, please stand. Third reading amendment, thank you. Third reading amendment number 1 to Senate File 78 has failed, 24 to 38. Senate File 78, having been read 3 separate times, the question is, shall the bill pass? Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Allemand. Allred. Andrew. Angelos. Banks. Bear. Berger. Brown. Burkhart. Byron. Chadwick. Chestick. Clauston. Conrad. Crago. Davis. Eklund. Haroldson. Harshman. Heiner. Henderson. Hornock. Jennings. Knapp. Larson Lloyd. Larson JT. Lawley. Locke. Nyman. Newsom. Nicholas.
Excused. Maybe,
Nicholas. Nemec. Northrup. Oakley. Obermueller. O'Hearn. Olson. Ottman. Pendergraft. Penn. Provenza. Rodriguez Williams. Sherwood. Singh. Slagle. Smith. Stith. Storer. Strock. Stivar. Tarver. Trujillo. Walters. Ward. Washit. Western. Winter. Wiley. Yin. Zwanitzer Dan. Zwanitzer Dave. Speaker Summers.
aye.
Are there any changes? Closing vote. Vote closed. 62 aye.
Senate File 78, having received the affirmative vote of the majority of the members elected to the House, Senate File 78 has passed the House. Mr. Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move the House resolve itself into committee of the whole.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. Motion carries. Representative Haroldson. Yay!
The Committee of the Whole, please come to order. The first bill for our consideration is, where's the list? I need to get the list. Thank you. And computer just went down. Okay, first bill on our list is Senate File 5. Reading clerk, please read the bill.
Senate File 5, sponsored by corporations. Medical malpractice statutory update, an act relating to the insurance code. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 7, corporations, elections, and political subdivisions, to whom is referred Senate File 5, medical malpractice statutory update, respectful report same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Representatives Chadwick, Haroldson, Harshman, Knapp, Newsom, Olson, Ottman, Wiley, Yin. Representative Olson, Chairman.
You have heard the reading of the bill. What's your pleasure? Chairman Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, that it do so with the recommendation that Senate File 5 do pass. There are no amendments on this bill. And I will actually turn over the explanation of this bill to the good chairman of the Committee of the Whole from the land of the wheat. Representative Haroldson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We didn't plan that one out well, did we? So before you today, we have Senate File 5. Let me get to it real quick. Okay, we have Senate File 5, Medical Malpractice Statutory Update. So what we're finding in this bill, if you have the bill in front of you, you're going to see that it's not a long bill. It's just a bit of an update to the basically how we're going through and we're actually bringing the not the registration. Sorry, I was all ready for committee of the whole. I'm not ready for this. So it'd be how the notices are given to the state. So the problem that we had is there was a miscommunication as how we were actually giving these notices for malpractice. And so what was happening is the potential for there to be some issues that slid through the gaps. And so this here just clarifies that. In the body of the bill, you're going to find there under 26.3.124, the annual statement reporting of claims against healthcare providers, confidentially abstracted statistics, and it says there in the red language, at the discretion of the commissioners and after notice provide under subsection D of this section, and then they struck shall, and it says may be required, and then the second correction or the second change is there under D where it says the commissioner shall give insurers not less than 3 months notice if the information in subsection A of this subsection will be required to be reported to the commission. So this is a deal, what they're finding is whenever they're having issues with a provider that, or a licensed provider that has been charged with malpractice, as they're bringing this forward, they were having some issues with how that was being reported. So this would clean up the timetables and the structure by which it was reported. And with that, I stand for questions.
Speaker Pro Tem Stith.
Mr. Chairman, I guess I'm trying to figure out what problem this is designed to solve, because it seems like the effect of this will be that we'll just no longer know what malpractice claims were filed against healthcare providers, whereas now we do know. And this will just bury it in the background, because what we're doing is we're changing it from a mandatory reporting to if the commissioner feels like it. And so the commissioner will just say, no thanks, you don't have to report, and we'll just stop getting the information. So I don't understand why, what is so burdensome right now about this reporting. It seems to me that the public has an interest in knowing, what's the status? Are medical malpractice claims going up? Or are they going down? You get a report, so in the future you'll just hide it. This is an anti-transparency bill, it seems. So explain to me why secrecy is good, I guess is the question.
Representative Haroldson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, sorry, I'm getting back into the place where maybe we can answer these a little bit better. So this is obviously the insurance that is doing this reporting to the DOI. The DOI compiles the data and attaches the report to the department's annual report. So this here would just be how that DOI report is put together and how they're getting the information for that DOI report. And so what they were finding was it was just incredibly disjointed as they were getting it from different ways, where this here would consolidate that report so we're getting more information all together in one package, so to speak, instead of multiple streams coming in where they were having an issue with having some loss through the I guess the process as that information came in is how we heard it in committee.
Vice Chairman Knapp.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. And just to add to that, I believe they're still going to be getting the information. They're going to be using a national practitioners database. And if that database were to go away, or go down for information, they would give 3 months warning and start the reporting again. But this is just a way for them to better track it using that national database.
Speaker Pro Tem Stith.
Mr. Chairman, I guess I'm just confused about the statement that this will help them better track it. This says they're not going to track it at all. So how is that better tracking? I just don't, if there's some problem, like, so for example, if the insurance company said, wow, this is really burdensome and we're spending 400 hours a year and it's a really bad thing because it's so burdensome to make the report, well, okay, I can appreciate that kind of argument if that's true, but I'm not hearing that. I'm just hearing that we're going to not get this report anymore. And I think it looks like this was passed in 2005, okay? And in 2005, if I recall, the medical malpractice was a really hot topic, right? And we were really worried about the high cost of medical malpractice insurance and, obstetricians, for example, not wanting to practice because their insurance premiums were so high. So I think that's when, it looks like that's when this original bill was passed. Maybe it is the case that these reports just aren't useful to anybody, but I haven't heard why they're so burdensome or why we don't want to know. It seems that it's still useful to know what the trend is, whether we're going up, whether we're going down. I mean, obviously, it's still a problem in Wyoming that our health insurance premiums are among the highest in the country, right? And so it's relevant to know what's causing that. Is our medical malpractice claims part of the cause of that, or are there other drivers of high health insurance premiums? And so it seems like this report helps us ascertain what component of high healthcare costs malpractice claims are and what is being driven by other things, right? Other factors that make your health insurance premiums high. So I just don't, I'm not hearing why this is so burdensome that we have to give the insurance companies a break. I don't know. I mean, they're doing it already. They've been doing it for 17 years now. Why stop now? So thank you.
Representative Haroldson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So these insurers are actually putting this information on the national database. So what we heard is there was no need for insurers to report because that report was already held on our national database. And if there were to be something that were to go away, if that national database were to close down, there would be a 6-month window where they would have to report to the state. So this is a redundancy. It would make it easier on the department, we heard. It would make it easier on the insurance companies because of the fact that it was disjointed, coming in not in this basically bulk report. It was coming in multiple strains. And then at the same time, it was not near as all-encompassing as the federal report. So the federal report basically is already there. It already meets the needs. We don't need to meet the needs on this state report. And so it gets kind of that clunkiness taken away, and we now free up where we don't need to have the state getting this report because it's already on the federal basis, and this just makes it easier on the department and on them. So the information that was given to us was the fact that this just needs to be cleaned up because it's a redundancy, and the redundancy isn't even a good redundancy.
Representative Chestick.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Question for the bringer. Just a genuine question. I don't know how I'm going to vote on this yet. So the information is available and reported to the national level. Is it reported out by the national level on an aggregated basis? And if it is, can it be disaggregated to find out just what's going on in Wyoming? Because I think it's useful to have local information. If there's different trends going on in Wyoming than nationally, I think that's good to know. But if we can still disaggregate from the national, that might be a solution.
Representative Haroldson.
Mr. Chairman, so I do believe that they can break it. I don't know how deep they can aggregate it in that realm, but I know that they can in ways, because they mentioned that they can, basically this will directly replace the report. That it's already out there. The report is already out there on the federal level, but it's in a better format than what the state had. And so this is just cleaning that up. So I know that they can get that same information that we currently get on the state report, but instead of it being in a disjointed form, it's in a cleaner form.
All right, question being called. All those in favor of Chairman Olson's motion that when the committee of the whole rises to report it, do so with the recommendation that Senate File 5 do pass, signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Senate File 5 has passed the committee of the whole.
Okay, the next bill for our consideration is Senate File 6. The reading clerk, please read the bill.
Senate File 6, sponsored by corporations, insurance rebating modernization, an act relating to the insurance code. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 7, corporations, elections, and political subdivisions, to whom is referred Senate File 6, engrossed, insurance rebating modernization, respect the report, same back to the House with the recommendation that do pass with the following amendments. Ayes, Representatives Chadwick, Haroldson, Harshman, Knapp, Newsom, Olson, Ottman, Wiley, Yin. Representative Olson, Chairman.
You have heard the reading of the bill. Chairman Olson, what's your pleasure?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Whoa. I sounded like the chairman of the committee of the whole for a moment there. So loud. All right. I'm going to back up from that. We good now? We good? We're good. Okay. I move that when the committee of the whole rises to report that it do so with the recommendation that Senate File 6 do pass, there is a standing committee amendment, and so I move the adoption of standing committee amendment number 1 to Senate File 6, and then I will turn over the explanation of the bill to the good representative from the land of the camels, our vice chairman.
Representative Knapp.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. You know, when you're rushing to get to a committee and you grab a quick box lunch and you walk in the room and they're just call and roll and you get that look from your committee chairman. Well, here we are. I'm presenting an insurance bill. So this is Senate File 6. And basically what this bill does, this was a bill brought by both industry and the department. And it basically combines 4 sections of existing language and existing bills or existing law into 2. So it's consolidating. It's simplifying an unfair discrimination and rebating language. Currently, there are different rules in insurance for property and casualty than there are for life and health. So our current laws have not been revised since 1983 and are punitive in nature. 49 of the 55 other jurisdictions have more recent updates than Wyoming. So this was made to address that. I'll handle the amendment, Mr. Chairman, if I can, within the bill, because it's a simple amendment, and then we can vote on it at the end. So going to page 2 in the bill, you're going to see a lot of red in this document. You'll be seeing a lot of red, but just contain yourselves. Okay, so on page 2, we have on line 12 current language, and this would be combining language from statute 2613-11C, and then at the bottom of the page, combining language from 2613-110B. On page 3, middle of the page on line 8, this is correcting and simplifying to apply to all insurance types. Once again, we had two different codes for 2 different types of insurance. On line 14, this is model law language as to what is not available by insurance companies. And on line 17, that's model language explaining the rebate description. Turning to page 4, this is on line 3, combining 2613-110 A, B, and C, remains the same with no change. And 4 through 6 cannot offer free items as part of the purchase of insurance or inducement to purchase insurance or give free insurance because of previously bought insurance. 8 through 10 is existing law similar to 26-13-109 AI. 12 through 13 talks about what is allowed and is existing in 26-13-111. On 15 through 20, it's existing in 26, 13, 111, that bonuses could be additional coverage. On 22 and 23 on that same page, it's existing in 26-13-111A, a life debt plan, which is a life insurance premium collected biweekly or weekly, typically usually at the same time as a policymaker or policyholder. These policies are typically less than $1,000 sold to low-income individuals. Turning the page on page 5, it's existing law on 4 through 7, 2613-111, and is in line with other sections of the code. This doesn't prevent insurers from offering discounts or adjusting rates if needed. This is saying if it's non-discriminatory to underwrite and adjust rates based on the risk. For example, a merger of employers, the risk changes, pandemics, corporate changes, and things that affect the group. On lines 9 through 13, it's existing in 26-13-111. This is for health policies, and it attributes risk as a percentage of health outcome or disease in exposed individuals and allows large discounts for larger group policies. Lines 15 through 19 on that same page, existing in 26-13-111. This allows for companies to offer discounts for ease of administration. Turning the page to page 6, 1 through 3, this exists in 26-13-112D and allows insurers to give back premiums. Lines 5 and 6 allows insurers to pay agents. Lines 8 through 15, existing in 26-13-111B, allows selling combined products, life insurance with securities occurring at the same time. Lines 17 through 20, this is new model language meant to clarify what is allowed and modernizes it, sets parameters, claims mitigation like items, and Fitbit. On lines 4 through 6 on page 7, prevent loss mitigation or loss control deals with fire extinguishers. 14 through 16 deals with blood pressure cuffs. Line 18, Fitbit or step counter. Page 8, 10 through 13 relates to the benefits being reasonable to the premium charged. 26-15-111, no over-the-top items, and has to relate to the insurance and be affordable. Lines 15 through 17 is a consumer protection transparency. If they provide an item, they have to provide contact info to the customer to ensure the product is used and intended. This is where the amendment comes up. In line 22, actually, line 8 on page 9, but I'll explain the amendment. So insurance companies basically need to say what they offer. It has to be listed as to what they offer. But sometimes they do offer something that isn't listed in their program. This allows them basically to have a pilot program on that, but they have to have an announcement to the department of the pilot program and the testing program prior to launching it. And this was listed at 21 days, which was the model. And we had amended that in committee to 30 days, which is more standard. Lines 13 through 21, this is updating currently at $0, previously separated commercial and personal lines, and they're both together now. Is everybody still with me? On lines 1 through 3 on page 10, this was amended on the Senate side as a industry-supported amendment. 11 through 18, This is seen commonly with the department and was definitely needed in the bill. On 20 through 23, it's a requirement in 26-9-228 currently. It's 3 years and requires justification and proof, and helps the department investigate if needed, holds agents accountable, and is common in most states. And finally, on page 11, 5 through 7, needed rules at this time, but here, in case we do find something, it's clear it needs to be. So with that, I will entertain questions.
Questions? Hearing question on the Standing Committee Amendment number 1. All those in favor of accepting Standing Committee Amendment number 1 as written, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. That is passed. Question having been called on the bill. All those in favor of Chairman Olson's motion that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, to do so with the recommendation that Senate File 6 do pass, please do so with the, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? No? That is passed. Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. Chairman, I move the Committee of the Whole stand in recess until 2 p.m.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, no? That motion is passed. Committee announcements. Chairman Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Your committee number 8, Military Transportation, Highways, and Military Affairs will be meeting in about 15 minutes to go over 3 bills, Senate File 18, Senate File 19, and Senate File 20.
Thank you. Chairman Northrup.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Your committee number 4 will meet Friday, February 10th. upon recess. We will be studying one bill, Senate File 84, Education Model Student Apprentice Policies.
Chairman Newsom.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Your committee number 6, Travel, Recreation, Wildlife, and Cultural Resources, will be meeting upon noon recess about 15 minutes from now. And we will tackle Senate File 59, State Parks Account Agency Expenditure Authority, and Senate File 88, Hunting Licenses Weighted Bonus Point System. Thank you.
Thank you. Chairman Burkhart.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Your committee number 9, Minerals, Business, and Economic Development, will not meet tomorrow, our regular meeting day, due to a lack of participation from our brethren down the hall.
Chairman Nichols.
Thank you. Your House Appropriations will meet on adjournment this evening to hear Senate File 158.
Chairman Washut.
I'll wait till adjournment.
So, sorry, what was that? Okay. No other committee reports, so we are adjourned until 2 p.m. Recess. Sorry, not adjourned, recess till 2 p.m.